Hello and welcome to this video for today. Whether you're here for the first time or you're returning, hope you will enjoy. Hey there guys, how's it going? Getting into our first part of D&D Adventures in the Forgotten Realms cards here today. And of course, as I try to do, we start out with looking at the legendaries. It's a crazy set. There's so much stuff to get through, and you know, Modern Horizons has just been out for a week, but there's so much to get through, so we better get on having a look at this set because there's so much in it, as I said. And you know, it will be on our doorstep very soon. It will be on Arena next week on the 17th, I believe, 16th or 17th. You know, so yeah, it's going to be coming down the pipe hole very quickly. So yeah, we better get into it. And I also want to just say, while we're having a look at these legendary creatures, all of these creatures and all the cards that are from D&D, if you're wondering, if you're a D&D person that's sort of new to Magic or wants to get into it or, you know, whatnot, and you're kind of like looking at some of these cards and going, well, I know these characters from the lore and whatnot, but it doesn't sync up. Just remember that this is Magic's take on these cards, and they've got to frame some of these things in such a way so it makes sense in terms of how it will work in the Magic realm as far as cards design is concerned. And these are just representations. They're not exactly what the things were in D&D, so that's why they're like that. And if you're a Magic person and wondering why some of these cards are so weird and wacky and whatnot or whatever, yeah, it's for the D&D reference or the D&D flavor. So first off, we've got Avak the Archlich, 2 and a black for a 5/5 zombie wizard. So those are really good stats, but comes with this drawback, and we see this on a few of these cards. When he ETBs, if we haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, we return him to our hand, then we venture into a dungeon. Tomb of Annihilation is the shortest dungeon if you take, you know, the shortest route on it, which is 3. So you can get this out in 3 turns, maybe 4 if you don't want to take the short route, because you do have to stack a land going down that route. But once you get this thing onto the battlefield, what do you get? You get this creature that whenever it attacks, for each opponent you create a 2/2 zombie creature token unless that player sacrifices a creature. Most of the time, most people aren't going to want to sacrifice any of their creatures, and then you're going to get a whole bunch of zombies from this guy. So that seems like pretty good. It seems Grave Titan-esque, but it also seems like Fleshbag Marauder-esque, I guess, kind of, where you're making each opponent sacrifice a creature. They do have the choice, but again, for the most part, unless they're really built around taking advantage of sacrificing their stuff, they're not going to want to. So it's decent as I said, it's a really powerful effect, but it has that drawback. They've got to put that drawback on there because otherwise it'd be just too powerful as a 5/5 for 3 that attacks and then makes each opponent sack, or you get a 2/2. I mean, like I said, Grave Titan is 6 mana, and this is probably 6 mana, depending, 8 mana maybe. But once you've got Tomb of Annihilation done, you know, you can just cast this for 3, so that's pretty darn good. There are other ways. There's certainly a lot of zombie support. Like, zombies would be the best area to go in with this, I would think. There's a lot of combo potential with some cards and whatnot. Like Storm, or whatever it is, the blue enchantment that you can cast zombies for 0 mana. So then you can basically complete all the other dungeons, except for Tomb of Annihilation, infinitely, pretty much, and just win the game from that, because it'll draw you your entire deck, drain your opponents out infinitely, and all this stuff. So there's all these potentials with those other cards, but they are in blue mostly. Oh, that specific one is in blue. And a lot of the other combo cards that you could run with it to infinitely, play it basically are in other colors. So it's hard to look at this as a monocolor commander and go, well, what homes does it have, or what homes could you build around it? And I'm going to say this with all these adventure cards. It's a little bit sad that there's not a 5-color legendary that cares about dungeons or would work well with dungeons. Tazri maybe is the best one because it cares about the party mechanic, and most of these are on the party tribes, wizards, rogues, whatnot. So maybe that could be a deck with some of these and some party mechanics and whatnot, but other than that, I don't really see a home for it in the 99 of too many decks unless you really want to go down the I'm going to go infinite with these 2 cards and I just have to get them somehow. So I guess you're running all the tutors just for those 2 cards or whatever. But, certainly you do have that option. But again, I don't know. But anyway, as the face of its own deck, again, I'm just not sold on that. Maybe, yeah, you'll get it out there eventually. It does bounce it to your hand, so it does get around command attacks in that regard. So it's always 3 mana again. So that's decent. So, but then even when it does die eventually, because it will, you get to play it again for 3, or for 5 rather. So yeah, that's not too bad. But yeah, I would consider, where I'm gonna think about it. Like Zombie Tribal might want to take advantage of it. If you really care about, eventually getting this thing out there, because you want your card to be out there and doing what you want to be doing with it. You don't want it to be just bouncing back to your hand unless you can infinitely take advantage of it. I guess the question you've really got to ask yourself when you're looking at cards, this card and cards like this is 3 mana, enough value when you just venture into a dungeon? I don't know. That's not for me to say, in my opinion. If you're a real person who really likes the flavor of this card or these cards or whatnot, or you really want to build a dungeon deck, or you really want to put this in your zombie tribal deck and just see how it goes, eventually you will get it out there, sure, but I think 4 or 5 times trying to play this, maybe there's some other effects that you'll get off of it, sure, but again, I don't know. It's just, to me, like a lot of these cards, I'm just kind of very met on because they have that little bit of a restriction. It's a nice build around to a degree, but again, I'm just kind of a little bit harsh sometimes, a little bit, I guess, because, it just doesn't seem like that good of a payoff. But anyway, move on. Next, Asmodeus the Archfiend. 6 mana, 6/6, 4 and double black, Devil God. If you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down instead. Pay 3 mana, draw 7 cards. Pay a black, return all exiled cards with Asmodeus the Archfiend to their owner's hand, and you lose that much life. So it's fixed Grizzlebrand, kind of, I guess, sort of. Like, you're going to be in mono black probably for the most part with this, I think, because you really need to be able to hit that triple black activation. There's not that many ways that I think you can get around that in other colors. I don't see you splashing for it, very much. Maybe in a 2-color deck that's heavy black, maybe, but yeah, in the 99, I just don't really see it. So what can it do as your commander? It's kind of hard to say because it's just a card draw engine, and it being a card draw engine is really good and powerful, but yeah, it's like, well, what synergies does it have? The ability isn't, just tied to exiling cards. it's if you would draw a card, you exile it instead. So you want more effects to draw, well, not draw cards, but exile cards that are actually drawing you cards and then put them to your hand. I guess this is also a way around some of the effects that say you can't draw extra cards and whatnot. It says draw 7 cards, but you don't draw those 7 cards. You exile them from the top face down, and then you return those cards to your hand. So this is one of these weird commanders I think they've printed maybe to get around some of those weird effects and whatnot. But for the most part, I don't know how good this is. I think in the 99 of some black decks, it might be kind of good as a draw engine, as, you know, a fixed Grizzlebrand or whatever. Because even this fixed Grizzlebrand seems okay, you know. It doesn't have any evasion or anything, but it could give it. It has a 6/6 body, which is pretty decent. You know, if you have any abilities to draw extra cards, you're just going to exile them instead, which means that you get around some of the effects that mean you can't draw extra cards, which is kind of nice for those decks that need it, but most of those decks are not interested in this 6 mana thing. They're really low to the ground, efficient decks, so I just don't see this is going to see play against those decks very much. So it's in a weird spot. I think it's a cool card. Some people might play it as a fixed Grizzlebrand or whatever, but I don't know. It's just kind of an oddball, and I don't know what to make of it. So, yeah. Barrowin, Clan of Udar. I'm sure I'm butchering some of these names, so sorry about that. But again, do my best as I can. So 4 mana, 2 and Orzhov, so a white and a black, for a 3/3 Dwarf Cleric. When he ETBs, we venture into a dungeon, so yeah, same thing as sort of the last one to a degree. But when it attacks, we return target creature with CMC or mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield if we've completed a dungeon. So again, Tomb of Annihilation or whatever is the shortest dungeon. So, you know, 3 turns and you finally get this thing to do a Sun Titan-esque effect. You know, there's not that many white dwarves. Maybe there's a couple. There's a few clerics. So maybe you're a black-white, you know, with some clerics and have some other, you know, sacrifice life gain synergies so that you can take advantage of things in your graveyard, or perhaps milling your stuff into your graveyard. But again, you know, 3 or 4 turns, having to have this and maybe 1-2 other things that venture into dungeons out to actually get value off of it. That's the problem I see here, is a lot of these cards are built for standard. And that's the thing. They're not powerful enough, in my opinion, for our format. So a lot of these commanders will probably see play maybe in the 99, but not as much in the head of their own deck. Though it is a sweet deck, and if you like the flavor again, go for it. But yeah, that's probably where I'd go with it. But unfortunately, there's so many just like Orzhov sacrifice style decks that it's just like, yeah, this is another one. It could go into some of those decks as a value piece to recur some of your stuff. Eventually, you'll get the dungeon done, I'm sure. So again, you know, this is an uncommon one, so it's a little less powerful than some of the other ones. But well, I've seen some the uncommons that are actually really decent. But anyway, I'm not going to talk much more about this, and I'm going to move on to the next one. Bruenor, Battle Hammer, 4 mana, 2 and Boros or Lawhold now, is it? So a red and a white for a 5/3. Each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it. You may pay 0 rather than pay the first equip cost of equip ability to activate each turn. So another Lawhold, Boros, red and white, essentially whatever they want to call it now. Equipment-based commander. Look, most of these Boros or Lawhold or whatever red-white commanders end up being Voltron commanders. Is this better than any of the other Voltron commanders? Once you suit it up, it does have 7 power, so it is 3 hits to kill. or at least once it is 3 hits to kill, so that isn't too bad. Again, a lot of these decks just don't go wide very well or don't equip many things very well. You have a lot of equipment to equip one thing for the most part, and a lot of stuff that helps you support that 1 or 2 things that you really want to get through. So going wide with equipments isn't that big of a thing. So it really just cares about itself or the commander that you're sitting it in, to equip and kill people with. So, +2, +0, that isn't nothing. It's essentially, another enchantment or another equipment going onto it, which is, not terrible. So that it can be useful in those decks. But again, I just don't see that it's any better than any of the other commanders that we've gotten in the last few years. It's sad, again, that they've gone back to this whole Boros does equipment or whatever. Again, whatever you want to call this red-white pairing does equipment stuff and attacks, I wish they'd do something a little bit more interesting. It is a dwarf warrior, so if you care at all about dwarfs or warriors, maybe you can fill it with some dwarves and warriors. And whatnot. Again, the party deck, maybe it will see some play in a party deck if you want to go down that route. But yeah, just overall, again, this one I'm a little bit more hyped for. But again, since they sort of went down the same route as they've gone down about a bazillion times before, it's just, it fits in the Boros or red-white decks that already exist. Or maybe if you really want this guy leading the helm of your deck, yeah, sure. Next, Delia, Wild Mage, 4 mana, 3 in a red, Elf Shaman, and it's a 3/2. Whenever it attacks, you choose target creature you control. You roll a d20. If you roll between 1 and 14, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary if that creature is legendary, and it has exile this creature at the end of combat. If you roll 15 through 20, you create those tokens and then roll again. There's a few cards that are in this set that help you re-roll and whatnot, so I think that this could be a good commander on its own, and it does care about dice rolling and whatnot, so you mostly want to be revolving around dice rolling, and I will put up the link that I made for a video about dice rolling. Make sure you roll proper d20s, because I'm sure that people are going to get pissy about people rolling spin down life counters and whatnot, so make sure you follow what people want, not just like, I'll just roll this because it's there. You have to have real deal 20s, because I'm sure people will get angry about that. But anyway, there's another commander here that maybe I think it would be find a better home in, but there's not many dice rolling commanders, so this one's okay. Again, I'm not high on monocolored commanders, because monocolored commanders, you get stuck with not being able to deal with so much stuff that's not in your color wheel, essentially. The other colors that you add to it are often the things that help boost up the things that you can't deal with and whatnot, so that's where I just find a lot of these commanders. But again, it's a cool idea, and definitely we'll see some play, certainly in one of the decks that I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. Next, Drillizot, Dorho Arden. I'm definitely butchering these names, so sorry for butchering these names. But 5 mana for a 3/3, so 3 and Selesnya, so a green and a white. It has double strike. When it ETBs, we create a 4/1 legendary cat creature token, Gawain her, with trample. I know I'm probably butchering that too. But whenever a creature dies, if it has power greater than this Drizzt's power, then you put a +1/+1 counter on Drizzt equal to the difference in power. So you make this token cat. That token cat dies, you get a counter on this thing, making it a 4/4 double striker. I don't know. This is a really weird commander. It is an elf ranger. I don't think there's much synergy with elves and rangers. Double Striker, I think this is kind of a standard card, but even then I don't know how much of a standard card it is because it's 5 mana and doesn't really do very much and only provides you a little bit of value if the token dies, which is the thing that people are probably going to kill least. They're probably going to kill this thing because it can get bigger. I don't know. I just don't see much place for this in a generic deck. I don't know. You could build this as a token deck maybe or a +1 counters deck. It's just too open-ended. I really want commanders that sort of you know what you're doing and you know exactly what you're going to do with this. So I just don't know what you're going to do with this. So that's the problem that I have with this. It seems cool and interesting. Maybe someone will figure out what to do with it, but yeah, I'm not going to try to figure it out really too much. And I'm just going to move on to more cards because there's heaps more cards to talk about. Like Ebondeath, the Draco Lich, 4 mana, 5/2 flying. So 2 and double black zombie dragon. So when he enters the battlefield tapped. And you may cast him from the graveyard if a creature not named Draco Lich died this turn. So you sack something or something dies and you can cast this guy back from the graveyard. You know, that whole, if it's not named Iymrith Draco Lich is irrelevant in Commander. You're only going to have one copy of this, so pretty easy to make sure you get around that restriction, except for when you sack it, I guess, but you still will have killed something else on your turn, so technically you could still replay this guy. So again, you can do some of the same things I was saying with the first commander, where you can infinitely cast him if you can cast him for 0, or even if you've got lots of mana or whatnot. There are other things that you can take advantage of, like sacrifice, life drain, aristocrat style effects. There's lots of these in mono black. There's lots of these in lots of colours, as I sort of was saying with the Orzhov one as well. So certainly Zombie Tribal might want it. Maybe someone will throw it in their Dragon Tribal deck, but I'm not too sure about that. It's more of a niche card. It's not really... Yeah, sure, it has 5 power, but it's not that big of a beater. It doesn't have trample. It doesn't have a lot of toughness. So it dies to a lot of, cheap blockers or whatnot. And it doesn't have trample, as I said, so it doesn't even get through those blockers when you hit them. So I'm not very high on it, but there is some combo potential, as I said. But otherwise, I don't know what you're going to do with it. But in that combo potential, I think it could be really good. And you might see some play in some zombie decks or some sacrifice-based decks. Next, Fandreth, Devil's Chosen, 4 mana, 3/3, so 2 and an Izzet, so a blue and a red, Tiefling Warlock. So whenever you roll 1 or more dice, Fandreth gains flying and menace until end of turn. If any of those results were 10 or higher, you roll a dice. So this is the dice rolling commander that I was really talking about earlier. So it fits certainly into that red and blue area where most of the dice rolling stuff is. So this I would suspect being the go-to dice rolling commander if you want to build dice rolling deck, or if you want to build a chaos deck, you might want to try to put this in that deck, or have this as the face of that deck. There's the coin flip deck, which is sort of similar, so that's a very chaotic sort of deck. You can do all the chaosy coin flip dice rolling sort of shenanigans. There's some support for that sort of stuff in the set, so I definitely think that this will see a lot of play as people's chosen dice rolling commander. I don't see that there's many 4 or 5 color commanders that this could go in that really care about dice rolling, so I think it's really its own thing, or maybe a chaos deck would want it, but yeah, otherwise I just think it's really good on its own. Next, Grazilaxx, Icrid Scholar, butchering all these, 3 mana for a 3/2, so 1 and double blue. It's a legendary horror creature. So there's no real horrors, I don't think, or not many. But whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you return it to your hand. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So I would see this mostly maybe as a mono blue ninja deck or maybe mono blue Talran style deck. But I think its main purpose will be to go into blue-black ninjas in Commander because that's where you want it. You want your stuff that gets blocked to bounce back to your hand so that it doesn't die because it's small and fragile. The stuff that can be blocked. And the stuff that can't be blocked is just going to get through for damage and then you're going to draw a card. So that seems pretty good. There's an enchantment that does a similar-ish thing to this. So I just think that this replaces that. Plus it draws cards now, so that's really good as well. So I really think that that'll just see play in those style of decks. If you want to be sneaky and do ninja things or do that sort of thing, it's really good. Next one up, Gretchen Twitch Willow. Simic Commander, 0/4, so blue and green for a halfling druid. This commander, you pay 4 mana, 2 and Simic, so blue and a green. Draw a card, you can put a land card from your hand into the battlefield. It's the same boring old thing that Simic gets again. It draws cards, it ramps, it does all the things and the bells and the whistles. It's very much like Tadiover, it's very much like AC. It's going to go in those decks. It might run its own deck because people will want to put this out there and just go, look, I'm just a friendly Simic deck and whatnot. No, it's definitely not. It's definitely very powerful, especially for an uncommon. It's very strong. And just again, like I look at this commander and I look at some of the other commanders that, especially like White got, and like again, they just give rocket ships to Simic and Green. It's ridiculous. And White's just finding themselves in the Stone Age. So yeah, I don't know. This is a bit gross of a commander. It's really good. Certainly, as I said, goes in the AC or whatever Tadiover decks. Again, could go with its own deck. If you can find ways to reduce its ability cost, it's even better because then it's whatever it's called, Explore or whatever, the blue-green Explore, whatever it's called, that was in Standard recently for on a stick every turn or whenever you can do it. It's also kind of fixed, not Talran, what's his name? It's a fixed Thrasios, as well. So that's also pretty darn good. I can see this again being a really powerful commander on its own, being a really powerful piece to any Simic, blah blah blah, lands, value, stuff, I win, right? Deck. Anyway, next, Hama, Pasha, Ruin Seeker. This is a Azorius commander, so 1 and Azorius white and blue. 2/3, human wizard. Room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. Again, if you're wanting to build 5-color dungeon deck, this would probably go in it. Otherwise, I just don't think that there's much to say about this. I don't think you can build a blue-white deck too much around dungeons. There's not really enough support in just those colors. I think you really need to be a 5-color deck to take advantage of most of these cards because you want most of them in one deck. Next, Icingdeath, Frost Tyrant, 4 mana, 2 and double white, 4/3, Flying Vigilance, Dragon. When it dies, we create a legendary equipment artifact token with whenever this when it's equipped, this creature gets +2/+0, and equipped creature attacks tap tug creature defending player controls, and it has equipped for 2. Look, sure, your commander might die, and getting that little bit of extra value out of it is kind of nice, but again, I just don't know what you can do with this. There's not really a direct path to say this is what you can do with it. Yeah, once you equip this thing with its own sword token. It's a 6 power creature, which isn't too bad for 4 or for 6 or whatever either. So that isn't too bad, but does it just go in an equipment deck? I don't know. Does it just go in a mono white deck? Mono white is like the worst color to go into, so I just can't see much synergy going on for this. Maybe it's just a standard card, I don't know, but again, just I'm not high on it. Maybe a dragon deck would want it, but again, it's not that big of a beater. And you know, it dying, you don't really care about the sword or whatever, the equipment. So you want to care about the equipment somehow, I think, or you want to have ways to sacrifice it and get it back. I don't know. There's just not that much you can do with it, I don't think. So I'm not high on it. Next, Inferno of Star Mounts. 6 mana, 6/6, so 4 and double red. Dragon. The spell can't be countered. Flying haste. You pay 1 red, and it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. When its base power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. So it's very much like a Banefire effect. You know, you can pump this thing up to 20, shoot somebody for 20, hit somebody else for 26 for 20 commander damage, basically killing them. And you know, or you can basically 40 one person this way. That can work too. You know, not being able to be counted, I guess that's for standard purposes because you want your big bomb thing to come out and do its thing. Yeah, that's still a commander or a Timmy style thing as well. So having haste, it means it attacks right away. Mono red does suffer the same problem. It's stuck in mono red. You can't deal with a lot of things. So once somebody has an enchantment out that you can't deal with, you're stuck. Once somebody's actually comboing off, you can't deal with it. You know, and again, it's very aligned on this one card. This one card doing its one thing, and you know, the rest of the deck is just going to be mana. Like, that's my problem with it. The rest of the deck doesn't really do anything around it very much. You could just put it in a mono red dragons deck or a 5-color dragons deck. Might be alright, or maybe a mono red burn style deck, but I just can't see much to do with this. Again, maybe it's just more of a standard card, so yeah, I'm going to move on. To Iymrith, Desert Doom. 5 mana, 5/5 flying dragon. So 3 and double blue. It has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, you draw cards equal to the difference. So it's always going to draw you 1 card. It doesn't help the rest of your creatures, you know, draw cards or whatever. So whenever you deal damage with your other creatures, it doesn't do anything. So Ward 4, essentially a little bit more protection for it. Maybe that's more of a standard thing. So it's still a good thing to have on it. It does mean that you're probably just going to have to Wrath rather than single target remove this thing. So maybe this is a Voltron deck. Maybe this is just like it goes in a dragon deck because it's a dragon. Fun, flavorful dragons, that's fine. Tiamat is coming, as I said, down the road, so, you know, we're going to talk about that. It might go in that deck, but there's so many other good dragons, so it's just kind of hard to say this would fit in there. Sure, card draw is nice, but again, it's only on this one thing, so it doesn't help the rest of your team do drawing and whatnot. And there's just sort of better options to draw cards and whatnot. So I don't know, I'm just sort of low on this again as well. This next one I'm actually really high on. This 2 mana Kalain Recluse Painter. So he's a Rakdos, a black and a red. For a 1/2, when it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure. Whenever other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional counter on them for each mana spent from a treasure to cast them. So immediately this is a 1 mana thing because it nets you back that treasure that you spent a mana to spend it on that treasure. Now the other ability, I want to check a rules thing on this, and I don't know whether there is one yet because I can't look it up for yet because I probably haven't done it. is that if you can find ways to essentially tap your treasures for mana without, sacrificing, because that's the main thing that you do with treasures, is you tap them and sack them. But there are ways that you can tap them to add mana. So I'm wondering if you use those treasures to tap for mana without sacking them, that you'll still get the counter. I'm not sure. Hopefully that does work, because you're still using those treasures to cast those spells. So if you don't have to sack them, then this is sort of permanent ramp. I really like this commander. I really think there's a lot of stuff that you could do to build around it. There's a few things that are in red that deal with treasures. There's a couple that are in black that deal with treasures. I think this would be good in a treasure deck. If there's a 4 or 5 color deck or 3 color deck that cares about treasures, also cares about +1 counters, so the undying or the whatnot sort of affects the persist effects. Dethrone also really cares about +1 counters and whatnot, so that could be a really good card in those style of decks. But I'm excited for it in its own deck, because I want to see if I can just put a bunch of treasures out onto the battlefield with a bunch of pirates and whatnot that happen to make treasures. Put some +1/+1 counters on those creatures and do other effects with them and whatnot. It sounds really fun and really interesting. If you can find enough things to sort of make it work, it sounds really cool and really interesting to me. So yeah, I might even build around it, who knows. Next, Krydle of Baldur's Gate. Another 2 mana one that's a 1/3. So this one's a Dimir one, so a blue and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player mills 1 card and they lose 1 life, and then you scry 1. So whenever you attack, you can also pay 2, and if you do, target creature can't be blocked this turn. More ninja-y, rogues sort of stuff, more unblockability sort of stuff, helping you mill, helping you get more cards, helping you see more cards that are in your deck. Good if you can pair it up with things like the rogues that help you get cards in people's graveyards and things like that. Those are really good synergies to work with it. That advantage and whatnot. So yeah, this is pretty good. I think it will exclusively be another rogue style or ninja commander, or it'll just go in the ninja deck. So that's what I expect to see from it. Maybe it'll see play in some Voltron style decks, or maybe it can become a Voltron commander. I don't know, but you'd really want to find really good ways to buff this thing up, because it's fairly small. But just like it does get in for that damage every turn if you can pay that 2, which isn't that big of a cost. So yeah, maybe. Next, Minsc, Beloved Ranger. This is a 3 mana, 3/3. So this is a red, green, and white human ranger. When he ETBs, we create a Boo legendary 1/1 hamster creature token with trample and haste. We can pay X to turn target creature you control having base power and toughness XX until end turn. It also becomes a giant in addition to its other types. We can only activate that ability at sorcery speed. So we can pump this guy up, or we can pump up our token, or we can pump up anything else that we have. So is this another Voltron commander? Don't know. Is this a token commander? Don't know. So that's the problem with this. Again, it's not exactly clear what you want to do with this. It's a human ranger. I don't think there's that many synergies around this. Maybe that other human ranger that makes a token might go in this deck. I don't know. But again, it just seems like there's not enough direction to go, this is what you do with this, thing. So that's just my problem with it. I really like things that you can go, okay, I can see exactly what I should do with this for the most part. That's what I like. But anyway, seems interesting, and maybe some people will try it. Next, Nadaar, Selfless Paladin, 3 mana, 3/3, 2 and a white, Dragon Knight with Vigilance. When he ETBs or attacks, we venture into a dungeon. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. Dungeon tribal or bust. I don't think it fits into mono white. There's not enough in there, I don't think, that you could take advantage of in the dungeons. So I don't really think you'd run this as your commander. It's definitely a 99 card and definitely a card you're just going to run in dungeon tribal. So that's all I've got to say about it. This next one, though, oh my god. Old Gnawbone, 7 mana, 7/7, so 5 and double green, flying dragon. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you create that many treasure tokens. Yep. So this is just the thing that I'm talking about with green and Simic. Look, I love green. I like playing green. But did green really need this? No, it didn't. Green doesn't have many flyers to start with. It doesn't have many dragons. Yeah, it's cool they had a cycle of, each color of dragon and whatnot. And there's even some uncommon dragons in this set. Again, this is so overpowered. Again, they're putting green and Simic to the moon or to Mars even nowadays with these cards that are so overpowered and so pushed, and yet white is still twiddling with sticks in the Stone Age. That is the problem with a lot of these cards. Look, this card, essentially its ability does have haste. So you play this, you attack with all your creatures, and then you'll get a whole heap more mana back from this. So essentially this will be 1 or 2 mana, if not free, or even maybe generate you mana. And then next turn, you just attack with this thing if you haven't generated its mana value already. And then it gets its mana value back for you anyway. So this is just a stupidly busted card that I'm sure we'll see play in a lot of decks. Dragon Tribal, absolutely. Why not? You might as well, because then you'll get a lot more mana to play a lot more of your dragons. Might as well, whatnot. Any deck pretty much that has green, probably play it because it's good enough, because it'll make you mana and you can cast more things. So, yep, that's just really ridiculously good. Even if you don't use all the treasure at that one time. Yeah, sure, green doesn't care about artifacts and whatnot. Who cares? This card's just OP and really good. So, next, Orcus, Prime of Undeath. So X2 and Rakdos, so a black and a red for a 5/3 flying trample. So when it enters the battlefield, we choose one. Other creatures get neg X till end of turn, and we lose X life. Or we return X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from our graveyard to the battlefield, and they gain haste until end of turn. It's very flexible card. I'm not sure if it's that good as a commander because it might paint too big of a target on your back, but being flexible, either a board wipe, either essentially a much more expensive Toxic Deluge style effect is quite good, or just a mass reanimate and then giving your creatures haste is really good. So both of those things good. Maybe it's good enough just to see play in any deck pretty much that runs these colors. If you get a lot of mana, I definitely think that this is a really good effect. It's kind of like Agadeem's Awakening to a degree as well, so that's a really good card, and this is quite good as well. I was also kind of thinking it's kind of like Command the Dread Horde, but it's not really. It's much more like Agadeem's Awakening. So yeah, plus it's also just a board wipe on a stick, so that's really good. The flexibility is there. I think a lot of decks will run this, and maybe a couple decks might find it as their commander, but again, I don't know if it's your commander, it might paint too big of a target because either people will see that you're trying to wrath them all the time, or that you're trying to reanimate all your stuff in your graveyard and kill them. So maybe your graveyard will get the bigger target than this, but I don't know. It is susceptible to other things. So, yeah. Next, Oswald, Fiddlebender, 2 mana, 2/2, 1 and a white, Gnome Artificer. You pay 1 white, you tap him, you sack an artifact, you search your library for an artifact card with mana value or CMC equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value, put it into the battlefield, then you shuffle, activate, own it as a sorcery. You know, again, this is a good card, but unfortunately, it's not that good in comparison to a lot of the other stuff that has been given to all the other colours. Finally, white has a commander that you could say is one of the top tier commanders. This is a birthing pod style effect on this creature. But again, it's sticks and stones in comparison to what Simic's got and to what every other colour's got in the last couple of years. They have been way too conservative with white's designs in the last few years. Like, finally they are giving them things, but again, they're just like giving them sticks and stones while they're giving everything rocket fuel to go to the moon. So, yeah, I'm really sad about this. This will be a cool commander that some people will build around, certainly, definitely, but again, when you compare it to some of the other stuff that's even in this set, it's just ridiculous how far behind white is. So, yeah. But anyway, move on. Next, Shessra, Death's Whisper, 4 mana, 1/3, so 2 and Golgari, so black and white, human, elf, warlock. When it enters the battlefield, target creature blocks this turn if able. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. So that's only at your end step, and it's only if a creature died. It's not for each creature or whatnot. So that's not that great. You know, making a thing block, maybe you can have some stuff kill your opponent's stuff if you've got death touches or things like that, but or you can murder some of their stuff, things like that, kill off your opponent's things. There are ways to do it, but I don't see it being any better than Merrin or any other of the Golgari commanders or any of the other like sacrifice aristocrat style commanders. I think, yeah, you might find space for it in some of those decks, but yeah, I just don't really see that it's much better, so I wouldn't really think about it being my commander too much. Next, Targ, Demon Fang Gnoul, 2 mana, 2/2. This one's a Gruul, so a red and a green. For a Gnoul, whenever Targ, Demon Fang Gnoul attacks, if you attack with creatures that have total power 6 or greater this combat, attacking creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. And you can pay 4 mana, 2 and Gruul, or a red and a green, to double Targ's power and toughness until end of turn. So he can be a 4/4 the first time, he can be an 8/8 the next time, you know, 16/16, 32/32 after that, you know, so he gets big fairly quickly. If you can, again, reduce his ability cost, it'd be pretty good as well. So, yeah, there are things that you can certainly do with that. Another Gruul punchy commander. This one seems pretty good. If you can find ways to give your stuff trample, that's the main thing that you want to do. There is certainly a few ways you can do that, so maybe this is alright. Is it Voltron? I don't think so. You want to go wide with it for the most part, I think. So it's pretty cool, actually, but I don't know what specifically is going to be done with it. Next, the Tarrasque, 9 mana, for a 10/10, so 6 and triple green dinosaur. It has ward 10, which is irrelevant. Essentially, it has hexproof because no one's ever going to pay 10. Whenever it attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. Kind of has menace in a way to a degree because it essentially takes out 2 things if somebody wants to block. But it does at least take out one of their things, definitely. And fight does have some support, the fight mechanic. So maybe this sees play in the fight deck. that would probably be it. I definitely want you to find ways to give this thing trample, but otherwise this thing's an easy slam in most of those fight decks. Pretty good. Again, yeah. But anyway, next, Tiamat, 2 and Wooburg, so all the colours, so 7 mana, 7/7, Dragon God, so a white, blue, black, red, green, Flying Dragon God. Yeah, when he ETBs, if you cast it, we search our library for up to 5 dragon cards, not named Tiamat, not worried about that because it's Commander, we only have one Tiamat. Each have different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, again, not worried about them having different names. This is Commander, we're only going to have one copy of each card anyway, for the most part. So, yeah, it just gets your best 7 dragons to your hand. It's draw 7 of your best dragons, or 2 to your best 7 dragons. Is it better than Dragon? Unfortunately, probably not. Dragon does stuff in the command zone, so that's really powerful. You don't even have to cast the Dragon. It's certainly really good when you do cast the Dragon, but it still does stuff for you even in the command zone. This you actually have to cast, so it's not better than Dragon. But I definitely see it going in the Dragon deck. Maybe some people will open a whole bunch of dragons from this set and throw them into this commander and just like run all the dragons from the D&D universe or whatnot. I don't know, but maybe there's other decks that you could think about putting it in, but mainly I think its home is the Dragon. I don't think Morophon's as good as the Dragon either, so I think that this definitely is just another deck that, you know, another creature that goes in the Dragon. Though again, maybe some people will build around it. Next, Trelasarra Moondancer, another 2 mana 2/2. This one is a Selesnya, so green and a white elf cleric. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Trelasarra Moondancer and you scry 1. It's a good Soul Sisters card, so if you're gaining life, putting counters on this, yeah, I can see you putting this in a life gain style deck, or it being the face commander of a life style deck. You're running all the Ajani's Pridemate style cards and whatnot to put counters on things and to buff this thing up and to do all kinds of life gaining shenanigans and whatnot. So yeah, I definitely can see that there's space for it. Maybe it's a Voltron commander for the most part. I don't know, but yeah, certainly being able to scry 1 is pretty nice value as well, and it just happens whenever you gain life. And that's pretty easy in these colors for the most part. So yeah, I definitely think this can do a lot of stuff in those style of decks, or, you know, at the face of one of those decks. Next, Varis, Silver Moon Ranger, 3 mana 3/3, so 1 and double green, Human Elf Ranger, reach ward 1. Whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, you venture into a dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever you complete a dungeon, you create a 2/2 wolf creature token. Yeah, sure, again, like, adventure or dungeon style decks might want it, but beyond that, I don't know. 3/3 reach ward, I would rather it have a much bigger butt, essentially, or much more toughness and way less power. I really don't care that it has any power. Like, I wanted to survive being able to block the biggest, baddest flyers in the multiverse. So I'd rather it not have hardly any power and have all the toughness. Getting that free value for a 2/2 wolf when you complete a dungeon, yeah, sure, that's fine as well. Strictly a dungeon commander. There's not nearly enough in monocolored, so again, just 5-color stuff would be the way to go with this. Next, Volo, Guide to Monsters, another Simic one. This one's 4 and Simic, so blue and green. 3/2 Human Wizard. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if that creature doesn't share a type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, you make a token that's a copy of that creature. So you want to play anti-tribal with this card. A lot of the creatures that we've talked about here and there, I talk about their synergy with other cards that are of the same type for the most part. So what can you do with the humans or the wizards or the rogues or the whatever? Because you want to fit it into a deck that mostly has that type. This one, complete opposite. You want to find all the things that are of a different type. There's that other Simic commander that came out recently that does double up the number of tokens that you get from making tokens and whatnot. So that's a pretty good card with this as well. So yeah, I definitely think you can build a token deck with this, or a sort of cloning sort of style deck, but not clones, because clones don't work with it, because when you go to clone something, it's already a copy of the creature that you're cloning, so it's already a beast or a warrior or whatever it is. It's not a shapeshifter, or if it's a shapeshifter, it's already the same type as well, so it doesn't work that way. But if it's a illusion or whatever, it becomes that creature type. It isn't an illusion in addition to its other types or whatever, unless it says otherwise or whatever. But yeah, definitely this gets the juices flowing in the creative sense. Like, what can I do with this? How can I make this deck work? So I definitely think that people will try and build around this. This might be one of the most popular commanders from the set. Next, Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, 6 mana, 5/6. This one's a Dimir, 4 and Dimir, so a blue and a black. Beholder. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of that player's library. At any time, you may play the top card of their library. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. Do you want to lose all your friends or all the people that you want to play with? Yes. Okay, cool. This is the commander for you. You know, all the blue-black stuff that's in essentially send triplets is in your colors, and I think this could fit in send triplets, but most of the stuff, again, that's in send triplets is in the blue-black that you want to do the steely copying sort of stuff. So I can certainly see this, and it does fix you for those colors. Again, the biggest problem with this, if there is, besides you losing all the people that you ever want to play with, is that you have to get past the second land. The first land you can play, but the second one you can't, because or unless you've got something that says you can play additional lands, you get stuck on that second land. So you want ways to mill extra lands or whatnot, put them to the bottom or whatnot, exile them, whatever you have to do to get more cards. And essentially your hand now becomes essentially whatever you can play off the top of somebody else's library and whatever mana you have. So that seems really powerful and really good. Again, just, yeah, I think some people will get salty from this very quickly. Next, and the last one, Zalto, Fire Giant Duke, 5 mana, 7/3 with Trample. So 3 and double red, Giant Barbarian. When he is dealt damage, we venture into a dungeon. So maybe this is the best enraged commander. I don't know. This is the only enraged commander as I'm aware of. So maybe you could go enraged, but strictly I think, again, it's a dungeon commander. So I definitely think you want to run it in a dungeon deck. So 5-color dungeons. So, yep, but that's pretty much it. And oh boy, there was a lot to get through. I'm glad I got through it fairly quickly. It still took a fair while, so sorry it took so long still to get through all these. But there was so much to talk about, and there's still so much to talk about. More cards. The precons are coming out soon, so yeah, I've got my work cut out for me. Let me know down in the comments, though, which one of these that you want to build around. Am I a little bit too harsh on some of these? Are there some of these really amazing or whatnot? Let me know. Write them down there in the comments below. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. You can also get social with us on our Facebook. To follow all the updates, make sure you hit the like button. And on our Discord. To get into it, please leave a comment and I'll send you an invite. All links are in the description. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today, and if you have, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing, and I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.